Yo, Mike is hot.
All right. All right.
I just need to turn the music and double check. Wanna just make sure before. Just FYI, you might need to change to that.
All right.
But just move here, make sure it pops up on screen. Sweet.
Perfect.
I'll say something. I just want to make sure audio.
Hello, everyone. Are we almost ready for the general meeting today? Yeah. All right. Welcome to RITSEC today, guys. All right. Make sure you guys join the Discord if you have not, because we are checking sign-ins during pizza today. If you guys want free pizza, make sure you guys sign in. Is sign-in dropped? All right, sign-in is being dropped. Give it 1 second. Make sure you guys check out the calendar for any cool events. If you guys want to check out any interest groups, you will be able to see when they are happening. All right. We also have the RTSEC mailing list. Make sure you guys join that to receive emails about upcoming meetings. And now time for announcements. Make sure you guys clap it up for the sponsors. All right. Thank you guys. Also check out our social media. Check out our cool LinkedIn page. All right. Hold on. All right. Attention graduates. If you are graduating, make sure you guys scan this QR code. You can get your grad stole for if you're walking in this May. This is if you're a part of RITSEC, if you're also on the CCDC team, CPTC team, or a part of WESIS at RIT, you are eligible to get a grad stole. You have to have at least 3 sign-ins if you're trying to get it under RITSEC. All right, we're all good there? All right, and now we have Intro to Koth, King of the Hill by Miller and Lucas. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Intro to Koth.
Hello.
My name is Miller. I'm a third-year CSEC major. I'm also a D1 athlete. Very professional sport, very difficult, takes a lot of time and effort in practice. I'm also on red team, and Don't worry about it. It's very difficult. I'm also the Koth guy. If you guys have any questions about Koth, you can come to me. I also like lifting, swimming, skiing in my free time. That's a picture of me skiing.
Hello. A lot of you people know me. I'm Lucas. I'm a fourth year CSEC. I'm also deaf with cochlear implants, if you haven't noticed already. I'm also on ops, and I love doing infra. And I also do red team, and usually people call me the club room guy. So, thank you.
RITSEC wouldn't happen without Lucas. Okay, so here's what we're going to be going over today. We're going to start with some Koth basics, and then we're going to talk about how you guys can design your own Koth box, and then we're going to be teaching you how to hack into boxes. And then we're going to go over some common tools that you might use with like penetration testing these boxes, and then also why you should join Koth next year. And for context, we use the words box, machine, host. We use those all interchangeably. So what is Koth? Koth stands for King of the Hill. It's basically like a little mini game for a competition where teams compete for access to a vulnerable machine, and you also want to try to achieve persistence, which means like maintain control of the box as long as you can. It's a purple team style component of ISTS. What do I mean by purple team? That means it's a mix of red teaming and blue teaming, because once you hack into the box, then you want to try to keep other teams out with your blue team skills. And it's also a big chunk of your score in ISTS, so a lot of people underestimate like the importance of doing Koth during the competition, and you shouldn't. So what are Koth boxes? It's basically just a bunch of vulnerable machines. It's nothing too serious. It's supposed to be like a fun challenge for you to come up with exploits. And they shouldn't be too difficult. There's multiple ways onto a box, so each box will have generally 2 to 3 vulnerabilities on them. So you have multiple ways to, exploit your way into one of them. Some of them are common, some of them are uncommon vulnerabilities. Some of them you can just find off of websites like ExploitDB, and you can just plug and play some scripts that you just found on the internet. Other ones require a little bit more thinking, a little bit more research, and you have to come up with exploits on your own. And yeah, some you can just exploit with Metasploit. How Koth works. So each team is given a Kali box. So for ISTS, you have 18 teams. They all have their own Kali box that can access the Koth network. The Koth network will have probably 8 boxes this year at ISTS. And the high-level workflow is you exploit vulnerabilities to gain access. That's like 90% of the work. And then once you have access, each of the boxes has a scoring engine. We use one called Scorify. And once you have access, you want to put your token in a file, and that will tell the scoring engine that you have control of that box. And then you start gaining points for that during the competition. And the longer you have it, the more points you get. And yeah, once you break in, you want to make sure you secure it and defend it from other teams so that you can maintain access as long as you can. So here's a typical setup that we would use. This is what we're doing for ISTS this year. We have some Linux boxes, some Windows. I think this year we have 5 Linux and 3 Windows. And we also have a mix of hard and easy boxes. So we have 2 hard boxes and 6 easy boxes. The hard boxes are going to be more custom vulnerabilities, more homebrewed, meaning you can't find them on the internet, not as common, so they're going to require a little bit more time to come up with your own exploit. And it's also only 1 to 2 vulnerabilities for a hard box. And then for easy boxes, these are much more common vulnerabilities you can just find on ExploitDB or VulnHub, and generally 3 vulnerabilities for each easy box, so they're much more accessible than the hard ones. And one more thing is the hard boxes sit on the internal network, whereas the easy boxes sit on the external network. So you would have to first break into an easy box to be able to access the hard boxes. So the hard ones are like a two-step thing. And then we also have these Koth tokens, which are basically CTF style flags. And these are just hidden in like places that are relevant to each vulnerability on the boxes. It's kind of just like a reward for teams that successfully break into one of them. And if you redeem it, then you get store credit during the competition, and you can use that store credit to spend on other things. Yeah, ISTS is super fun. So what is the difference between CTF and Koth? CTF is more of like a scavenger hunt, and you have like a list of challenges. You want to try and get as many as you can. It's usually mostly offensive challenges. It can be like crypto, reverse engineering, forensics. It ranges from a lot of things. And you can do it individually, or you have a team. For ISTS, you'd probably have one person doing CTF, one person doing Koth. And for Koth, it's mostly using your pen testing skills. That's like most of it, or hacking. And also researching vulnerabilities and exploits. And it's a mix of offense and defense because you want to try and protect your box from getting taken from other teams. Pretty sure UCF held my box for like the entire competition last year. And yeah, you're usually in a team, but I think like for teams like UCF, they probably have like a dedicated pen tester on their team that's doing the Koth challenge. All right, so let's get into some lower level terms. Here's just a definition that I got from NIST for what is a vulnerability. Weakness in an information system, system security procedures, internal controls, or implementation that could be exploited or triggered by a threat source. A vulnerability can be a lot of things. It's not just, I mean, yeah, a lot of them are vulnerable software, web applications, stuff like that. We also have different ways to classify them. So one of them is directory traversal, which is like, you just get to like read files from a file system. RCE stands for remote code execution. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then privilege escalation is where you have access as a local user, but you don't have a privileged user yet, and you want to try to find a way to elevate your privileges to be able to execute commands as root or admin user. And then we have Docker containers. You would want to do like Docker escapes on Docker containers. We'll get into that later. And vulnerabilities can also just be like misconfigurations. A lot of them are actually, like in the real world, a lot of vulnerabilities are just misconfigured services. So like accidentally allowing remote access on your database or something like that. And what is a CVE? So this term gets used a lot. It's basically just a way to identify vulnerabilities, and it stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It was a program created by MITRE, but it is now sponsored by CISA because it's grown very big. And yeah, I'll show you an example of one. So if you go to the NIST website, they have a huge database of the CVEs. This is one of them that I did last year for Koth. So this is just an Apache HugeGraph server, which is just like a web service. And this page will have like the CVSS score, which for this one is 9.8, which is very high. It's 0 to 10, I think. And it'll show you like links to references, or links to like advisories and like solutions and like researchers who have tested and proved that this vulnerability exists and what you should do to avoid it. So yeah, this is a very good resource for researching vulnerabilities. What if you want to design your own Koth box? So this would be like if you're black teaming for ISTS next year, you're going to go through this process of first you want to identify what you want your box to look like. You want to figure out what vulnerable services you want to do, or if you just want to do like your own misconfigurations. Do you want to do like exploit DB scripts or exploit DB vulnerabilities, or VulnHub like pre-made images that you can just download from their GitHub? Actually, before that, you should probably choose your operating system. So Linux or Windows, choose what flavor of Linux you want. Do you want to do a Windows Server, Windows 11, or Windows 10, whatever you're more comfortable with. And then you also want to figure out how you want them to get in and what you want it to look like from the attacker's perspective. So do you want them to be able to execute code? Do you want them to only be able to read files and then like maybe hide your password in there somewhere? And then do you want them to gain privileged access from your exploits, or do you want them to only gain access as a local user first and then have to do a privilege escalation to get to a root user? And do you want to include any red herrings? Red herrings are basically just fake vulnerabilities. So like it can appear like a vulnerable service, but it might not actually lead anywhere, and it kind of just wastes a lot of the competitors' time. But we still do it because it's kind of funny. So here's just a sample timeline that we used this year. We're actually like pretty on track for this, which is like I completely didn't expect that. But yeah, we're like on track for test deploy on Sunday. Applause. So this year we started way earlier than last year. We started in December, and this is kind of like a high-level overview of what you would be doing if you were black teaming for Koth next year. You want to get your first, second, and third vulnerabilities done, and then make sure you're documenting them and snapshotting them on OpenStack. And yeah, this is just a high-level overview. We'll get a little more into it. So black teaming in general requires a lot of testing, and the deploy process is very difficult because you run into a lot of unexpected challenges. I think Lucas will talk a little about those later. But we started much earlier this year because last year we ended up having a very tight schedule for deploy. So I think we started like late January last year, and then this year we started early December, so we had much more breathing room. And the goal was to get a lot of the work done over break, which we did. And deploying involves moving the boxes to the ISTS project on OpenStack, and that can break a lot of things. So you want to make sure that your services are starting properly. If your box gets restarted multiple times, you want to make sure that your vulnerabilities stay running. You also want time to be able to test scoring. That's a big part of it. Make sure that your scoring engine's actually reaching out to the Scorify server. That takes a lot of troubleshooting. And logging is very difficult to set up because the Koth boxes all look different, and they're all different operating systems, and it can be difficult to deploy one thing in a different environment multiple times. So here's some ways that you can practice your Koth skills. It's basically just like pen testing skills. You should practice using tools like Nmap for enumeration. And then you can, there's a couple websites like TrackMe and Hack the Box where you can just go join a lobby and start, trying to hack into boxes for free. It's actually really fun, and it's really good practice. And I know that RVapt does a lot of Hack the Box or Try Hack Me on Thursdays, so go to RVapt. It's really good practice. It is like pretty much the definition of Koth. I don't think Rahel's here, is he? Yeah, I just gave him a free plug and he's not even here. Okay, so this is just like the attacker life cycle, but this is like, what it would look like if you were a competitor doing the Koth challenge. So the first thing you want to do is do reconnaissance. You want to use your Nmap scans, figure out what services are running on the vulnerable boxes. And, if you see like a web server, see what type of HTTP requests you can send to mess with it. And, figuring out how to get initial access is like, it's like 90% of the work. So you're going to spend most of the time, researching what services are running and, seeing if you can look through CVEs, look through ExploitDB to see if you can find a known vulnerability in this version of the service that's running on the box. And once you find an exploit, that's how you get your initial access. And once you get initial access, the first thing you're going to do is put your team name or your whatever token identifies your team into the scoring file, and that's how you start getting points. And the next thing you're going to do is, if you're not already a privileged user, then you want to figure out a way to elevate your privileges, because there's two ways that we score King of the Hill at ISTS. The first scoring vector, I guess, is for initial access, and then the second one is just privileged access. So you can get double points for one box if you can get privileged access. So that's why you want to do privilege escalation. So you want to look for misconfigurations with sudo, or figure out any type of way that you can execute commands as a root or admin user. And that's how you're going to access the scoring file, which is in the root home directory. And then once you put your token in there, then that's how you start getting scored for privilege access. So then you're now maximizing the points that you can get for that box, and you pretty much own that box at that point. Persistence is all about maintaining your access to the box. The main goal of persistence, just do not get kicked out of the box. Maintain your access at all costs. It's a very common offensive security term that you'll hear. So create cron jobs. Cron jobs are just tasks that are scheduled to run automatically. Install your C2s, install your malware, do whatever you can if you have it to make sure that you maintain access to your box, because you don't want to lose points. And then after that, if it's an easy box, then assuming this is ISTS, then now you have access to the internal network where the hard boxes sit. So lateral movement in this case would be, starting this whole process over and starting to penetrate the hard boxes. So yeah, those take a lot more time, and I don't think I've ever seen a hard box actually get popped. Okay. Was it last year?
I think so.
Okay. All right, I'm going to hand the mic over to Lucas. He's going to talk about some commonly used tools in penetration testing, Koth boxes.
Yeah, so Miller talked about being able to exploit the vulnerability, but how do we get to that in first place? Well, we have tools that you can just get from the internet. Lovely. So one of those common tools is Nmap, which you can use for scanning the whole network. Usually in ISTS, the IP addresses of the boxes are not given to you. So you're tasked to Nmap, scan the whole network, see if there's any hosts that are up. So once you find the host is up in that network, then you can do a more detailed Nmap scan on that host to find ports that are open, and then in the verbose details of Nmap, it'll tell you which services are running. For example, 443 TPS, so you can just go to that website and see what's running on that host. So in other cases, there could be a common service Can't think of one right now, but you can look up the service and then just see if they're Metasploit or like so in Nmap it would tell you the version of the service as well. So you can look up on Google like service version vulnerabilities. So you got something, but what do you do with it? Well, you can try using Metasploit because Metasploit really has a good collection of vulnerabilities and payloads to exploit. So you can take a look inside Metasploit and see if it has the payload for that specific vulnerability of that service version. So that's your way of doing initial access and developing your exploit. There's also like for try hack me cost challenges, you can use like Hydra. It's like a login cracker, but it's not commonly used because that's sort of just like brute forcing. So you're more like exploiting the service, so it's not commonly used. Moving along, we also there's also netcap. It's like a socket connection sort of thing. So you have some way to exploit, but you need something to call back to you and be able to do some like bash things in the host. So we can just like put netcat part of the payload and then just send that to the exploit, and then you'll get a callback, and then you can bash, do a shell stuff through netcat. Well, now you have a local access, but you don't have root privilege access. So there's common tools out there like LimPs and WinPs. They have like a lot of tools that you can use to give yourself a privilege escalation to get root. I've seen that happen a lot. And then there's also burst suite. If you're in the same network as the host and you're able to access to the website, maybe there's a misconfiguration or some kind of exploit in the website. Well, you want to take a look at the requests and response that are being sent in from the website, and then you can be able to manipulate. Maybe there's a exploit from that or a misconfiguration. So that's where burp suite is very useful for. And then again, if you're in the same network, you can, and then like the host is like constantly beaconing or something or talking, you can look in Wireshark and see what it like service it's doing, what kind of packets it's sending, and then you can do some silly shenanigans with them. Going into more details with Nmap, well, how can you use it? Well, it's very, it has a lot of options, but you don't really need to use all of those options. But if you want to be a little bit sneaky, when you're scanning for ports, you can slow it down, not trigger any alarms or anything. So you have like timing template, which is like T and then number. And then very good option here is SV, capital V, to be able to enumerate for services. That's what I was talking about, where when you do Nmap scan and you can get back the list of services from the host. So that's the option you would want to use. And then sometimes the host may be able be only like EDP port, so you may have to specify scan for EDP ports, but it's not very. You don't really get good results out of that because in networking terms, you can't really tell if EDP ports are really talking to you. So, but that's there for you. And then if you don't want to ping any hosts, you can just disable it with just -pn. And then now, if you want to scan for specific ports, you're just like scanning the whole network, but you want to also look for this specific port, you can use -p and then see if it's up or down, open or closed. And if you want to scan all 65,536 ports, then you can just do -p dash. So, but if you have your own scanning script, then you can specify it with SC, and then just specifically for like the output, you can just do -il to make a separated list of IPs. So again, the one takeaway from mmap is you have so many options and you can learn about them. But it does not mean you have to know all of them. You just have to be able to be good at Googling how to use mmap. And then you don't have to constantly keep in your mind about this. Again, with the basic commands of mmap, like I said, if you want to scan for services, SV, and then there's a very aggressive, I forgot what that does. Do you remember what that does?
SV.
No, aggressive.
It might just be like it scans every single port.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's scanning, doing a lot of service discovery and stuff like that. And then if you want to also look for open services, you can do -o. And yeah, there's an example output right there in the screenshot. You can see all of the ports that are open or filtered because UDP and stuff. Yeah, cool stuff. Moving on to Metasploit. Like I said, it's a very large collection of exploits that you can use once you figure out the service version and then vulnerability right there. And it can automate the exploits and the payloads for you. And it's all of these collections are pre-built. So you can just like, hey, I want this exploit for this version, and it'll give you, and then you can specify which one you want. And then you can send it to the IP address, you can send it to the specific port, and then you can specify numerous things. It's very detailed and very useful tool to have. And it does, when you use Metasploit to exploit the vulnerability, it does give you like a shell inside Metasploit. So once you get access, you can do stuff inside Metasploit, which is really cool. And again, with the screenshots, you can see all of the parameters that you can have in the vulnerability exploit. Yeah, and then commands that you could use. If you want to just like start console, just do MSF console, but then you want to search for exploits, you just search, and then again, Miller talked about CVEs earlier. This is where it comes in. You want to just, when you're Googling for vulnerabilities, you want to grab that specific CVE and then just paste that into Metasploit, and it'll just give you that specific exploit. And then there could be more than one exploit for that CVE. So if one exploit doesn't work, you can just use the other exploit. And then for the parameters, you can like just set the remote host, and then if you want to be able to use your shell on different console or something, you can set your local host as your IP address. So, and then to do the exploit, you just type run and then let the magic happen. And then the next tool, Netcat. So it does establish a connection between two sessions. You can just like Netcat start session and then have a listener on your own machine, and then now you have a connection between two machines. So it's very easy to use. Yeah, and it can do file transfers too. If you want to do a reverse shell, you can just do Netcat attacker IP and then the port, and it just bash it. And while having a listener on your own machine, like I said, and yeah, it's really cool stuff. And then you can just transfer files with a bracket. So it's not just those tools that you can just use. There's also like common exploits and vulnerabilities out there. One of those is like Docker container escapes. So when maybe like a system administrator is running like Docker containers, So sometimes it's just admin could be running them in a misconfigured way. So they could be running it with -- privilege to give it all like host capabilities. So the issue with this is the attacker can mount host devices and then just access through that mount and then be able to do stuff on the host device, the file system. Yeah, and then there's also the socket. If for some reason the containers containers have access to the Docker socket, then they can execute commands as root through that socket on the host machine. And then next tool, Burp Suite. Like I said, web applications. So if the host has a website and it's making requests and response, you can look into those and then modify those requests and see what it responds with. So you're analyzing this traffic and you can see what it's really doing. With this, you can also find like vulnerabilities like SQL injection or cross-site scripting, and then maybe something like code execution in the URL or something. Just like add commands in the URL. Yeah. And then the classic Wireshark. So you analyze the network traffic in this thing, and you can just see what kind of payloads it has, network payloads. So you can analyze this and then do some troubleshooting and see if it's really doing anything, and yeah. So Miller did cover a little bit of this, but how would you go about finding these vulnerabilities on the machines? Well, the first is just like do an mmap scan of it, see any servers that are up, and then again go to Google, type in service version number, see if anything comes up, maybe like a national article about this service being exposed for millions of people or something. That was like 4 years ago, maybe. So that's a CVE right there. Or it could be like a common misconfiguration, so you have to look more closely. Yeah. So you want to be able to utilize these websites to your own advantage, because in times of like the competition, you're against your own time. You're trying to find these exploits before your competitors. So yeah. But then you get access to the machine through the exploit. What do you do next? Well, if you don't want to have the competitors be able to gain any like points out of this thing, you can lock it down and fix the vulnerable service so they cannot do the exploit anymore. So this way, you just fix the vulnerable service. You can just like update it to the latest version so that it's not vulnerable, or you can just change the setting for that is affected by the vulnerability. But each box in like a competition, it's not just one vulnerability. So you have to, if you exploited one vulnerability, you will also have to go about on finding other vulnerabilities and what other services are there on the machine. So that's your job to find them. And if you're in competition, obviously there's going to be some persistence methods that other teams were trying to do. So you want to take care of those. Make sure you're the only one on the box. So you kick them off and then be able to secure your own persistence on this machine. So sometimes when you fix a vulnerability service, sometimes it can like lock you out. So you need to make sure you have multiple ways of having access to this machine. And yeah, I can give like one common vulnerability I did for Koth. The box I made, it had WordPress on it, and the theme it was vulnerable to like file upload. So when you go to a WordPress website and then you see like a theme or something, you can just like look up the name of the theme, WordPress, and Google and stuff like that, and then you can just start your exploit development like that. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with Koth boxes. And then so Miller, why be part of Koth?
So why should you guys sign up for Koth next year? Competitive sleeper agents. I don't. What does that mean? You have the flexibility to be creative. So when designing your own Koth box, you pretty much have freedom of like customizing it however you want, as long as it works and like doesn't break during deploy. You kind of get to get a grasp of how the steps that an attacker would go through when exploiting something, not just a Koth box, but like in the real world, like the steps they would take from like initial access all the way to like getting persistence and then lateral movement. And you start to build a purple team mindset. So starting to envision how the competitors are going to gain access and then start, fighting with each other to try and maintain access to these boxes. You get a lot of practical, hands-on experience. I learned so much when I black teamed for the first time last year. I learned a lot about exploitation, and I was able to talk about that in interviews. So it's a very, very valuable experience. It does test your ability to work under pressure because things break, and then when you're short on time, you have to figure out a solution very quickly, especially during the competition. I know you were running around a lot last ISTS, and probably this one too. And yeah, you want to make sure you are collaborating a lot with people because two minds are better than one when solving problems. And yeah, you get a lot of experience like developing in a team pretty much, and it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely worth it.
When you're making a box for the competitors, was it worth it seeing your box get popped?
Yeah, so next slide. Koth has 100% return of investment, and the reason I say that is because you spend a lot of time like developing this vulnerable box, and then finally seeing like your own work getting put into play in a competition, and then the competitors like actually like exploiting it and like fighting over your box is like super rewarding. And it's super fun, and I'm really looking forward to this year's ISTS. So 100% worth it. I have a quote here that says, "Koth is like riding a bicycle." I stole this from Will, actually. To keep your balance, you need to keep breaking VMs until it works. Albert Einstein said that.
It's real.
And then we're currently in the process of deploying for this year. Hopefully test deploy on Sunday. We're not there the whole day, but Lucas is helping me with the Koth deploy. Thank you. Sign up for Koth next year. We just gave you all the reasons why you should. Any questions?
Yes, Leah.
My single favorite vulnerability? Probably that one Postgres vulnerability that's like 4 lines and you can just run commands like through Postgres on like the host system. Will did it last year, but he's not here.
I like doing the WordPress because like there's just so many WordPress websites out there, so you can just look up through, see if they're really vulnerable with such like simple things like a theme or something like that. So
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of different like plugins you can install, and a lot of those plugins are like open source, and they can have vulnerabilities in them. So yeah, WordPress is a common one.
when I'm like looking through like CVEs, it's just like 90% of were all WordPress
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's
Or
insane.
Apache,
Yeah, exactly.
or like Nginx or something. Any other questions? Yes, yes, I did. I play professional Valorant for the school, and I make money off of it.
He won the game last night.
Yes, if it gets you a job, yes, sign up. Bro, it can get you a job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Van flippin' tastic. Daniel LaChance.
All right, so we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm not sure if everybody saw the announcement. It's going to be like more of a social hour, so get around, talk to people that you've never talked to. There are still demos, so if you're interested, I still encourage you to do it. There are 2 demos, both of which are hard, although I don't think you're going to have too much trouble with them. It's pretty much just using Metasploit to do exactly what they just talked about and pwn 2 different ports on the same box. So 129.21.21.99. So that's getting hosted on our infrastructure. So please don't do anything stupid. Okay. Thank you. In pizza should be coming in about 10 to 15 minutes. So you have that to look forward to. And yeah, we'll be bringing some games out and whatnot. So let us know what you're interested in. All right. Have fun.
Yeah. Change that and then that's there. Yeah.
If that doesn't work, we'll just like reboot this thing.
I think it's because we fucking had to move the.
You're still on the RITSEC.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hayden, we're gonna go. We're gonna go. Desktop audio, right there.
What does this mean, desktop audio?
It's just like you can still speak through there, but it's recording through this. Are you sharing? You're not sharing.
I'm not.
Dude.
I said the meeting's been ended by the host.
Oh yeah, I restarted it.
Oh, you scrub.
I'm a scrub.
You think you can actually clip this? Like, what if I put this right here? Hello. Does this work? I need to show you. My God. This meeting link is invalid. Or we're 13 minutes past, dude.
Man, fuck you.
It's fine. I don't think the Zoom.
Yes, sir.
You sure? You think you promised right now?
I think you promised right now. On your life.
I'm dead.
It's invalid, bro. This is so scuffed. I'm thankful no one's paying attention though. So there, new meeting link.
Hazen. Then present your view.
So locked. Dang, we're good.
Legendary player.
Alright, we're running.
All right. Hello. Hi guys. Hey, listen up. This thing does not work on my thing. Hi guys. It's time for research. And I'm finally back, guys. I've been kind of busy on co-op and some other things, but I'm here now. I know you guys are ready for some exhilarating research, so let's get into it. And as always, if you're interested in presenting, please fill out the form. This one's for spring. There's some spots left in the semester. Most of the weeks are getting full now though, but we can fit more in. But if you're interested, make sure to fill it out sooner than later. And if I haven't reached out to you about it, send me a DM. Also, if you're interested in blogging, sign up for the blog, make a post, you'll get points, you get prizes, the usual. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in. I'm sure you all have already. Join the I don't know why I said that. You guys are all in this. Check the calendar. You already are. RITSEC mailing list. You're already subscribed. And make sure to follow our socials. And please clap it up for the sponsors, especially SRA. Thank you. All right. Some announcements. Anyone graduating, make sure to fill this out for the graduate stole. You have to have 3 sign-ins to actually be considered a member to get the stole, so make sure to fill that out sooner than later. And now, to get into some news, some super exhilarating news. Your favorite notepad editor, Notepad++, supply chain attack, ? And also, remote code vulnerability in, I don't know what this platform is, but they talked about it, so it sounds interesting. All right, Notepad++. So, recently found out Notepad++ had some issues with essentially this APT group, possibly Lotus Blossom. They said Rapid7 said attributed with medium confidence, which is they may be a state-sponsored group, probably Chinese, attributed to essentially hijacking updates for Notepad++. For certain individuals, it wasn't a widespread thing. It was more a targeted thing. And so essentially there's like this backdoor stuff that they deployed, and essentially after executing like the update service, it would go through a whole chain of stuff, do some DLL side loading, whatever. And it was like, there's like not a ton of info on it, to be honest, but essentially it seems like there's some like information gathering that these state sponsored hackers did, rerouted information back to a C2 server. So it's kind of interesting. It is like patched out now in the newer versions. So make sure to update. I don't know who actually uses Notepad++ here. Sometimes I do. But it is kind of interesting that they were able to essentially hijack the update service for Notepad++ because, I don't know, they had some poor management. Also, this remote code vulnerability in N8N, which I hadn't heard of it before, but I looked it up, and essentially like an AI workflow platform. So companies can like set up these workflows using AI and stuff. And so there's this remote code execution CV recently found. Essentially, like if you're able to pull this off, you can grab creds and stuff, which like has a number of issues. Well, there are like potential outcomes there. Some like cloud account credential leak, stuff like that. More like lateral movement. So it's not like super awesome. It's on like some of the like older versions of their service, but essentially it's like you create workflows and they go through different steps with AI agents, and essentially if they like put in a specific thing with a webhook, you can essentially pull off an RCE. So somewhat interesting. There's my sources, and without further ado, Tanush, and I guess Camden's not here, but the weird and wacky world of CTFing and why you should get into it.
You have the Zoom link, yeah.
Oh, I can send it.
I did nothing yesterday. I left at home. It was nice. What do you want? But you still have Discord. Yeah. It's like leave it there. I have to put this in any ice. Does the mic not work? Oh, okay, sure. That's fine. Hola. It works. It's pretty good. Okay, it's not bad. What's up? Oh, there we go. Kind of worked. Who am I? Tanush, Thanos, Studcom, whatever you want to call me, I don't care. To second year, third year, kind of, I don't know. I'm now in Slice. Me and Cam have made the swap. Who's supposed to be my co-presenter, but he's not here. Beautiful. XT, Trail of Bits. I like doing Rev Misc. Professional dumbass. I help lead VRig and Rev IG here. In a toxic relationship with AI. I simultaneously hate and love AI. It's really cool, but also really stupid. I love hardware and microarchitecture stuff as well as fuzzing. Huge Chelsea fan, and I like F1. There we go. Okay, what is this talk? Why am I here? For the last I don't know, 3 years of my life, I'd say I've been heavily committed to this very weird community called CTFs. And this is kind of my like passion letter to it. Just like, I fucking love this. I want more people here to get involved. And this is kind of me sharing that world with you and hopefully encouraging you to get involved with it, either during college, out of college, whatever. I think it's great. I'm going to go over the history of it for quite a bit and then maybe yap about just like my experiences, the perks, the benefits, other people at RIT who are involved with CTFs and kind of just like, yeah, get into it. This is a pretty non-technical talk, a lot of more like me yapping and hopefully it's kind of fun to listen to. But yeah, first of all, this talk was inspired by a talk by Jordan Wiseman at a conference called Insomniac. He's been in the community way longer, but he's a really interesting guy. He is the co-founder of Binary Ninja. Funny enough, 1 day ago, he messaged me about my license getting leaked. Was it leaked? No. Did I give it to somebody to use? Yeah, maybe. Regardless, yeah, it's a cool talk, and I just thought it was really interesting. It's like 8 years old now, so I'm like, hey, why don't we revamp this? Let's go for it. This is something he said that was kind of funny. Joey wanted me to include this in there. When you get pissed at reversing, you go shoot some stuff. The context was a video game he made to teach people reversing, but taken out of context, it's pretty funny. Anyway, really quickly, what are the types of CTFs? I think everyone here has some experience with them between your standard Jeopardy CTFs where you have like a challenge and you like do the challenge and you submit the flag. Woo! CTFs originally really started off with the more attack defense style exploitation system. And the idea there is every team has a bunch of services, generally speaking, custom applications. So they have their own code security bugs, and you have to find them, you have to exploit them, you have to attack over the network, attack all the teams, get all their flags, submit. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more confusing. A lot of older CTFs still maintain this format. The famous one, DEF CON, is still an attack defense CTF to some extent. But yeah, not the most important thing, but just good to know, I guess. Anyway, let's start from the very beginning. Where did this weird world of CTFing kind of come from? It can kind of be attributed to DEF CON. DEF CON, I assume, as most of you know, is like this really big and old conference out in Vegas. And yeah, it was kind of the first time that the concept of CTFs got really popular. The idea of them, you saw people getting involved with them, doing and competing in them. And then you can kind of see, it's really interesting to see how it spread out from there. And how a bunch of conferences were started in the name of DEF CON. They all had their own CTFs, and how these conferences became like these really big events in their own countries and their own regions, and how they're all connected back to DEF CON in their ways. But yeah, brief history about DEF CON if you didn't know. It was started by a guy named Jeff Mose. It was a farewell party for his friend. He called all of his hacker friends back in 1993. And he's like, hey guys, let's go to Vegas. Let's get fucked up. Let's have some fun. And they're all like, hey, this is really fun. Let's do this again next year. And they did again and again. And then 4 years later, it was this full-on conference with a bunch of people coming. And in 1996, they held their first DEF CON CTF. And it was really not super serious. It was just a bunch of servers were public. If you hacked into them, you got points. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of like the conception of it. I didn't know this. Apparently, DEF CON, the term, and I assume also like the term war games. War games is like another style of CTFs where it's just held forever, but like, who cares? It was apparently from a movie called War Games. I guess it's kind of cool. Prehistoric era, the fossils. I don't know if any of you guys are on like Shorts, Twitter, or not Twitter, but like YouTube Shorts. I keep seeing the meme of people being like, "When's your birthday?" And it's like before like 2000s, and it's just like they turn them into fucking fossils. That's how I like see these people. Like these people are old. Holy shit. But yeah. DEF CON's been happening for ages. There's been a bunch of really old teams that have had a lot of success. And I think as you go into either the security research or security industry, you'll kind of bump into these people. A lot of them have started companies. A lot of them are in senior positions at companies. I think Jordan Wiseman's talk probably can cover a lot more about like the history of those teams and the people there and the world that existed then. Because obviously, clearly not alive then, but you know. But yeah, I mean, one of the clearly seeable benefits of that era was like Binary Ninja. The company literally came out of like the CTFing community, and it was a really cool tool that spun into a company, and that was a pretty successful company. that does some really, really interesting research on the process of decompiling and binary analysis. But yeah. Okay. So I think this team might not have won the most in this era, obviously. They won once, but I think they quite literally define like this older era of CTFing. And I don't think any team or any group has had as much of an impact on the world of CTFing as Shellfish has had. And Shellfish is a hackademic team, and it's a bunch of academics, so professors, PhD students, and obviously people who are really interested in this scary, like weird world of DEF CON and hacking, who got together and were like, why don't we start a team? Why don't we start a CTF team? Why don't we win one year? Well, they did that. And since then, they continue to go to DEF CON almost every year. They're probably the oldest and longest team that still continues to manage to qualify for DEF CON and go to it. And modern DEF CON qualifications are like the equivalent of 100 people playing for like 48 hours. And the fact that this team still has that many people willing and committed to going to it is like insane. But beyond that, they've had like a huge impact on the real world. I'm sure all of you have heard of Pwn College, but these people are kind of like the foundations of it, right? They wrote it, they made it popular. All of them are in academia. A lot of the professors from Purdue and Arizona State are on Shellfish, some from GTech as well. And obviously, this is just like CS rankings for those who know. That was like the cybersecurity section, just the cybersecurity section. As you can see, a lot of like the schools I mentioned and that group of people are still heavily involved in the research world and academia, and their projects still matter, and they do a lot of cool work. They're still alive. We'll talk about some of the things they did in a bit. Pwn. I don't have anything explicit here, but throughout history of Pwn, a lot of Pwn winners have been CTF players. And if you don't know what Pwn is, it's a somewhat annually competition that's held 3 to 4 times a year, where you have targets and then companies pay you to hack them, and you can make a lot of money. I'm not going to get too into it, but just know that this is like a thing that people from the CTF community have done. A lot of people from the CTF community do it. A lot of companies are kind of founded to win Pwn, do Pwn, and excel, and then get contracts and money from there. But yeah, going on to that, kind of like the majority of this talk is probably going to be out the 2010s and then early 2000s, or the 2020s, 2020s. What the fuck am I saying? Oh my god. But yeah, I think the most interesting thing that kind of started now was the concept of CTF time. So CTF time is kind of like this global leaderboard for CTF teams and CTF players to, compare themselves against, or like find challenges or find competitions. But it really popularized, I think, CTFing and pushed it to like a very global and large audience. And it also just made, I think, it very accessible to find these CTFs and get involved. Because almost every CTF that's ever run is probably on CTF time, which is really nice. And it was made by the team Morlit. It's a Russian team that became like they merged with another team, but yeah, they still run it, which is really cool. They've run it for like the last 20 years. Very interesting, very awesome guys. But yeah, let's get on to it. So after DEF CON, I think what you started to see was a bunch of these conferences that kind of took the same concept of DEF CON and the whole like hacker space and hacker culture vibe and started spreading it around the world. So SecCon was like the Japanese version of this. You have HitCon in Taiwan. You have CCC, Chaos Communication something, which is in Germany. Big conference. Seesaw, Insomnihack in Switzerland. But point is, all of these conferences, they still had the same thing in common. They all have a major CTF element to it, where people travel around the world to compete against. And I think this is kind of like the really interesting aspect of like how DEF CON and CTFs kind of like grew and evolved, is that like in the early days you had like DEF CON as the main one, and it still is like the really big CTF, but something really interesting that exists as like a relationship as with these conferences is that SecCon and HitCon, if you win the qualifying CTF, or if you win HitCon or SecCon CTF, you generally qualify for DEF CON. That's just like a really interesting like connection that exists between these CTFs that I think is like really cool that it still exists. But yeah, in the 2010s we saw all of these conferences get really big. This hacker culture kind of spread internationally. a bunch of big international teams started to come up, and yeah. So I think the early 2010s and most of the mid part, to be honest, was kind of dominated by one team in particular, and that was PPP, which is CMU's team from way back when. But they won for like a crazy amount of years. I think they have the most wins from any team, and this team, I don't know, a lot of people from this team went on to win Ponton, start companies. We'll talk about some of them, but Theory, Mayhem, Security, just to mention too. A lot of them became researchers, and it kind of boils in later, but yeah. And throughout this time during DEF CON, I think it was really interesting to see how organizers kind of like dealt with players. Like something that every CTF player that's like somewhat in the community has heard about is the clemency year for 2017, where they wrote an entirely custom NDNS system and a custom compiler and custom like OS, and everything from scratch. So like all of the tooling that people use was completely broken and completely useless. And then in 2 or 3 days, everyone had to make their own custom tooling, and it was just like a totally chaotic thing for everyone. It was really cool and really interesting to hear about it. Yeah, and obviously that did not stop PPP from winning that year. Anyway. I think something really interesting that kind of came out of CMU and PPP that kind of like laid the foundations for like I think modern CTFing was Pico CTF. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Pico CTF and just like what it is, and I think it's really cool to see how throughout CTFing teams have always made an active effort to try to bring in new people and share the knowledge and spread the information. Shellfish had Pwn College. They still do have Pwn College, and it's still like probably the highest quality resource for learning exploitation and low-level memory use and just kind of everything. And Pico CTF is like a great way for high school students to sort of get involved with CTFs and kind of try it out. Yeah, and it still goes on to this day. And yeah, Pico CTF is pretty cool. But it sort of laid the foundations for a lot of things in terms of making it popular in the 2020s. The next big thing that I think you kind of see during this time frame in CTFing is the rise of something called the Cyber Grand Challenge. Excuse me. The Cyber Grand Challenge was this event held by DARPA, which is the United States like research arm, and they funded this competition. And the whole idea was investing in researchers and research teams to build out something called symbolic analysis, and a lot of really powerful tools and companies kind of came out of this. And obviously, just in terms of pure money, winning it got you 2 million second, 1 million, 750 for third place. And hopefully these names sound somewhat familiar, because Mayhem was actually the CMU team. It was PPP. This guy back here was the main professor behind Mayhem. Shellfish and Mechanical Fish was like a lot of people from that kind of group. The founder, Giovanni, was like one of the main leaders of the Mechanical Fish era. And you saw like a really interesting push for CTFs and that entire community to go into more research, in-depth work, and really trying to build out the future of security and offensive security. But yeah, it was really interesting. I guess something that's kind of cool is if any of you guys know Cipriana, her dad was actually on the team that helped make the Cyber Grand Challenge. And I don't know, it's just like a cool way to, I guess, connect it back to us. But yeah, it was really big, and a lot of companies and groups kind of started out of it. Yeah, going into who are these people, kind of mentioned it. David Brumley, the Shellfish team. I think I cut somebody out back there, but oops. But yeah, it was really cool. A lot of people are involved. And you'll see how this kind of like idea of CTFs and research kind of like exists even now, because there was a very adjacent competition to this called AIXCC. If any of you guys remember Sharad, this was like the competition he was directly involved with for a company called Zelic, who was also spawned from a CTF game. The Unks, the rise of the Unks. These are kind of like the teams that dominated that 2010s era. And, you know, you might not recognize most of these names or know what these people are, but you probably have seen like the effects of their work. And I think it's just cool. So, onward. So, I think the first group that we should mention is RITSEC and Hack for Soju. Hack for Soju is not directly connected. I thought they were, but I was wrong. But RITSEC was probably the only like American academic team, like pure academic team that's like competed at like a really high level at DEF CON, I guess outside of PPP, but like, yeah, they did a lot of cool things. They had a really strong year. They had their team captain, I actually don't know if she's the team captain. One of their members, Sophia D'Antoine, was a person on the team. She went and worked at a bunch of security companies. She's like, hey, I can do this better. And she started a really nice and awesome security firm by the name of Margin Research. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2024 because of a car accident. She will forever be missed, and absolute goat in the CTF community. Had an amazing impact and a continued legacy. But yeah, just I guess connecting this back to the real world. Margin Research is still like a very high quality firm that still produces quality research and does good work. Yeah, and then I guess kind of to talk about just like the legacy of it. There is a conference that Margin and then DICE started called QuidCon, which was made in her legacy and to support her. And then Hack for Soju, again, I'm not fully sure what the connection is. I thought they were like directly connected, but I've been told this is wrong. But Midnight Sun is another really cool conference in Stockholm, Sweden, held by the Hack for Soju team. That team still fly out to across the world and get to compete in it. And that's a photo of my a team that I'm really close with called Infoban at the Hack for Soju event, or at Midnight Sun. Sorry. Yeah, and that's another photo of them and DICE. Anyway, okay. So in 2010s, I think what you saw as well was like CTFing starting to get increasingly harder and more real world oriented, and that kind of came about with the rise of the real world CTF. I think it was one of those instances where the CTFing difficulty and the level of players really started to like get pushed up. It was always really high, but it got pushed up even farther. And I think this is one of the results of that. 1 second. Interesting. Okay, I think I accidentally deleted a slide. Interesting. Okay, well, that sucks. I'll go back and explain in a second then. But yeah. Real World CTF was also just like an example of other countries getting really involved in it. It was a CTF held in China, sponsored by a Chinese company, where they flew out this like entire massive roster of people to compete and break real world targets, routers, cars, applications, and it was like a really interesting and cool way to bring about all of the international CTFers outside of just DEF CON. But yeah. Some of you might know where this photo is from, or where it was, or the screenshot. It's actually from Live Overflow. His CTF team, Allies, was actually one of the teams who went, and he was one of the players who went. I have no clue where he is in this photo, but supposedly he's somewhere here, and this was stolen from his video. I guess that goes to my second point. I think during this time frame in the early 2010s, or like 2010s, mid-late, you kind of see the popularization of like CTF content creators and security researchers in the or like global domain, I guess. Live Overflow and Low Level both are like VR security pilled people who have like about 1 million subscribers on YouTube each. And they do like pseudo educational content, pseudo tech content. But yeah, pretty cool. 1 second. Okay, fuck me. I did delete that slide. I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about with these with all these teams was specifically Dragon Sector. I had like a whole slide on this. I don't know how it got deleted by accident. But if most of you, I assume, know the security research team or lab, Google Project Zero, in terms of recognition and popularity, I'd probably say Google Project Zero is like the most well-known security team in the world, and probably one of the best as well. Most of that not most, but a good chunk of that security team is actually from Dragon Sector, which was the team right here. Dragon Sector is a Polish team that was like the best team for like a couple of years straight. So like 2013, 14, 15, question mark, something like that. Maybe 17 as well. But they were a really powerful team, and both of their captains are on Google Project Zero or were on Google Project Zero. But yeah. I guess, again, really just shows you like the real world impact of doing CTFs and getting good at these things is like most of like the top people in the security research industry are definitely have like some connection to CTFs, either directly playing them or just being around people on the team. But yeah, onward. So I guess this kind of goes into like the start of the 2020s. And a team called Perfect Blue started getting rather good and rather popular around this time. You guys remember that conference I mentioned, right? Seesaw, all the way back here, Seesaw. Well, these conferences have real world impacts. People go to them. People get friends. People make friends. People make teams because of these conferences. And one of those teams was Perfect Blue. Perfect Blue has been first for like many years, 2020, 2021, 2023. And a lot of that team was a group of friends that was founded because of Seesaw, specifically Seesaw Red, the high school edition, which no longer exists, which is like tragic, but it is what it is. And yeah, this was 2020. They made a blog post about it, but yeah. They won 2020. That was like the COVID year, and they all were like university students. They all like locked in and like got first. Cool for them. Why do we care? Well, they went ahead and started their own security company. This person here, Luna Tong, that's her right there. Jazzy, that's him right there, I believe. But yeah, these two people now run their own multi-million-dollar security firm and hire a bunch of people from the security or CTF industry and do a lot of quality work. And their firm is called Zelly. But yeah, I guess it just really goes to show like the effects of all of these competitions and conferences and just like being involved in the CTF community. Is there's like a direct correlation between this and just like the like academic and both the research in terms of like industry that happens. Another team, this is very like US pilled, by the way. Both of these teams are like somewhat American based or US based, so there's obviously like a huge set of international teams that I just have not spoken about, like I don't know, Kappatsat, I don't know, there's a bunch of them. But yeah, you can probably go look into them more, and honestly, every team and every group of people has their own stories, people, and just like interesting things to tell you about. But one of the interesting teams that I think is worth mentioning is Dice Gang. Dice Gang was also another young American team that started out quite good. They were originally a high school team by the name of Red Pone. Some of them at least. Then they went to university, they got merged in with a bunch of teams, and they formed Dice Gang eventually. Dice Gang is another really massive team that eventually has somewhat of a sub company as well. But yeah, no, they're cool. This is like a photo of them from some years back where they won like 80K at a conference for a CTF. And I guess that kind of goes to show just like, I don't know, the value, not value, but like the money that's being pumped into this like community and just like being flown out to do these like insane competitions and win all this money. And it's like totally attainable. It's like anyone here can do it if you put your heart and time into it. Just, yeah. Yeah, they also spun off. One of the Dice Gang members created another security research firm by the name of RITSEC that also employs a lot of talented security people, and his name is Robert Chen. That is the co-founder's name, or founder's name, but yeah. Well, what about DEF CON? Well, we talked about all these CTFs and this crazy weird thing called CTF time. Well, while all of this was happening, a really interesting situation started to occur in the world of DEF CON CTF, and just how people went about doing these CTFs. And that's the result of mergers. So if you see here, 2020 and 2021, PPP stopped winning. Why is that? Like, PPP dominated an entire era and just, like, they were so good. What stopped them? Well, teams started merging. There is no size limit in DEF CON, and I think this is like a really interesting aspect about CTFing, especially DEF CON, is the fact that there is no team limit and it's whoever the fuck wants to play. You start getting teams that are like insanely large, massive teams from all across the world. Shout out FMC. But no, it's really cool, and it's like really interesting to see. 2020 and 2021 were two Chinese teams that came together and merged and beat the CMU team, and that actually goes on to who MMM is. MMM is the merger of some of the people from CMU/PPP who combined together to make a new team called MMM, and this is like the UBC professor Robert Shao. Theory is a Korean and American research firm that does a lot of cool work, and they're also like part of this merger. obviously, like some of the older players from PPP who no longer, obviously are in university but just work. But yeah, and MMM is just like a byproduct, their child, and it's like a bunch of people, and it's really big. I didn't include Theory on here for some reason, but yeah, Theory is just like another really interesting research firm. We can just go on their website because why not? But yeah, this is like another security company that was started by CTF players, hires a bunch of CTF players, and we'll talk about this as well, Exent, and the second version of the Cyber Grand Challenge in a second. I don't have slides for this, I'm sorry, but we'll just talk about it. This is a really, really interesting diagram. So this is like the merger chart for DEF CON, and just shows you all of the like teams that kind of come together and just like how crazy this kind of gets. Obviously you have some teams like Hype Boy and Shellfish who are just like individual teams that like qualify, but you get some like insane teams like Super Dice Code is like Code Red, Super Guessers, Dice Gang, and then Dice Gang is also just like a merger of a bunch of teams, and like Dice Gang's merger is also a merger of a bunch of high school teams, so it's just like a merger for a merger for a merger, which is like just wild to think about. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's people kind of like age out of CTFing and get bored with it, which is fine, right? But obviously people still want to qualify and get to finals and whatnot. But I think it's just like a really interesting aspect about CTFing and DEF CON is the fact that like almost anyone who wants to can play, because there's so many people and there's so many teams. And it's super like nice to the fact that there's no like team size limit. So I think that's just like a really nice part of the CTF community is that like the biggest final is like super open to people as long as you know someone and it's like I want to put an effort and I care. You can definitely just go to finals. So that's cool. Yeah, shout out to FMC. So one of the many individuals at RIT who's involved with the CTF community is our very own Eddie. Eddie is a player for FMC. He's right there. FMC is another one of these many, many large and cool mergers that exists. And it's a merger from people all across the world, Europe, Asia, obviously the US. And it's like insane to think this many people from all across the world came together to like in Las Vegas and competed at DEF CON together. And it's just like, that's just insane. Like, props to them. They got second, if that matters, in CTF time in 2024 as well. But really cool group of people, very talented group of people. Okay. Why should you do CTFs? Hopefully, throughout this rather long and pedantic history lecture, you kind of saw that, hey, this has a lot of real world impact. This has a lot of real world value. This has a lot of like actual benefit and results that come out of doing CTFs. More than that, hopefully the main thing that you're interested in is growing your technical knowledge. I think CTFing like teaches you a really broad scope of computer science, security, computer engineering, hardware, cryptography, blockchain. There's just so much that security as a concept covers because you can obviously apply the notion of security to anything. And I think CTFers have like really done their due diligence to like go and apply that to like any situation. Like a lot of these the newer like firms that I talked about in terms of like companies that came out of CTFing, they're all blockchain firms and they all audit like blockchain smart contracts, L1, L2 layer caching and protocols and all that fun stuff. Not caching, I don't know why I said caching, but protocols. But yeah. So there's like a very broad scope of security and what you can do, and there's a lot of like, if you're interested in hardware, microarchitecture, there's stuff for you. If you're interested in cryptography, there's stuff for you. But I think it's really nice that there's so much there, and you can obviously just cherry pick what you're interested in. The community and the people. Well, the world is pretty damn big, and it's nice to know it, is my 2 cents on this. Is there are so many cool and interesting people across the world, and I think CTFing is one of the few like avenues for meeting and talking to these people, because like how else am I gonna know that how else would you have a random friend from Austria who's just like a masochistic driver who drives at way too fast speeds and is like kind of a playboy? That is one of my CTF teammates. I love that man to death. But yeah, you can meet a lot of interesting people, and even my CTF team, we're mostly based in the US, but we have a lot of people from, not a lot, we have some people from Europe and then Asia. They're really cool. I met one of the Korean players from our team during DEF CON last year as well. So it's really nice to see you're like your friends online at these in-person events and these finals. Perks and jobs. Maybe the best part is most good CTF players don't really struggle with getting high-paying jobs, and like, I don't know, that's kind of a perk in this economy where a lot of people are complaining about like the difficulty of like getting jobs and like, you know, co-ops and all that stuff. It's like, it's kind of nice if you're like good at CTFing because you can just get hired for your CTFing skills and people trust you. It's kind of cool. I don't know. It's like me yapping about just like stuff I've done. I don't really care. I went to Seesaw. That was fun. This is nice. This is like the DEF CON stuff. That's me and Eddie over there against like the big DEF CON, like, I don't know, photo shoot thing. Had some people on our team. I was playing with Super Dice Code. I got carried to third. I did like fuck all, but I don't know. It was fun. Oh, I got to go to Google CTF in Mexico. That was pretty cool. One of the teams that won, I guess shout out to them, is crap, what's their name? Yeah, the Norse people. Kalmar. I don't know how I forgot their name. Kalmar's a really interesting team, and I think Kalmar is like this showcase of how like if you care about this, you can change your entire like country's like skill set. So Kalmar is Danish people, right? Danish. Okay. Danes. It is the Danes. I don't think anyone traditionally thinks of the Danes as being like these super hacker people or like insane hackers, but like holy shit, they won in 2024. You can kind of see it here. They got second, I believe, in 2025. They won Google CTF. They have this insane pipeline throughout their entire country of like promoting young players and bringing them onto Kalmar Union. And they do these massive events where they get sponsored by like the entire like the government, the massive banking agencies in their company, and they do these massive events with like 40, 50 people at universities all throughout the country for a bunch of events. And it's like really cool. And obviously, we don't really have that. Shellfish has some stuff like that, but I think it's really cool. And it just goes to show that like if you care, you can really change and get good enough to be like the best in like a couple of years, right? There's nothing stopping you. It's just a matter of effort, care, and dedication. And also just having the right people. Like a big thing with why Kalmar does so well is they care a lot and they have a lot of they have the ability to play with each other a bunch. Like at Google CTF. Google CTF has been a thing Kalmar has wanted to win for years and years and years. So what they did was they flew out a bunch of their players and had like a huge onsite in Mexico with like 12 people. Most other teams had like 4 to 6. 4 was how many you got paid for free, 6 if you had money to spare. Kalmar had like 10 to 12, and it was just like a huge fun onsite for them where they like destroyed everybody, and they did this insane like mango style losers bracket run where they were like bottom seed with us, and then they like went all the way and won the whole conference, which is like insane. But yeah. Okay. So this is like a schizo post and a half, but going back to like talking about companies. This was last year in VRig when we got a little bored. Some of us made an amazing VR tier list. Besides just like the meme of Chompy from like, if you know Chompy, she's at IBM Export. She's like an awesome individual who's like principal / head of IBM Exports, which is their offensive security research division. And she's like the most interesting individual you'll ever meet. She went from like banking and like finance to like security research after graduation, like after getting out of university. It's like the coolest shit. And she's just like a hyper talented individual. But she like roasted the fuck out of us for not having several companies on our tier list, which is kind of cool. And 32K views, which in the greater scheme of things is probably not a lot, but like in the VR community, I think that's like the entire fucking community. So yeah, 32 people saw us making a horrible tier list on VR forums. It's not that bad, but I don't know. There's a bunch of companies that hire, a bunch of places that hire. Even just our sponsors, Battelle, ICR, RII. Is there anyone else I'm missing? Magna Forensics. Yeah, Magna Forensics. There's like a bunch of companies that like hire for vulnerability research. They pay really well. Yeah, it's a really fun industry. It's a lot of cool people. There's a lot of like research, in-depth work. Hard. It's challenging. It might make you cry sometimes, but CTFing, I think overall is something I would never not do again. And I hope this talk inspired at least one person to get more into it. And huzzah! Thank you. Oh yeah! Shout out to Team Contagion, guys. That's the RIT team. You should go play for them. Okay. I don't want to make it about me. It's like yeah, sure. Well, yeah. I make it about my team a little bit. You can get that much.
Hello. Okay, that's actually it for today. Sorry, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming in. If you opened up the things on the ground, please make sure you close them properly. Come back next week for more research and things. No one's listening anymore. Yeah. If you could help, please rotate the tables to face the front of the room.
It was like
Thank
fine.
you.
It like ended in a I would make a better version.
People to give it. Sorry. Getting accurate to be very hard. I have no doubt the stories that we have are stories of makes necessary.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Hey, before I forget, I will submit to the newsletter, but the week of ISTS newsletter, say that there's
There's no meeting.
alumni panel.
I don't
Don't say no. Don't say no. Say
It's like a really fucked up game.
Instead, there's an alumni.
yeah, don't say the word for me.
Just say we're having an alumni panel.
Myself all the time. A high school sophomore making more money than I am? What? You don't make money.
Brayden used Quasar's salary to negotiate his salary choice, and then fucking Luna gave him more. That worked?
I'm so I know your friends are Brandon fucking stupid from what I've heard.
From who? From Shiloh?
Yes. From Shiloh, I heard Brandon's a fucking asshole. Yeah. It's like vice versa. They both hate each other. Like the cat's eye shenanigans. But then the cat's like, fucking retarded. You want?